In this video, I'm going to be breaking down exactly what's going on in the local real estate market here in Brantford, Ontario, so that you can make a smart decision. This video has up-to-date information for up to November. We're making this video in December 2024. And really what's important is predictions on what's going to happen next because a lot of news has come out and a lot of changes are happening to the real estate market. So stick with me. And if you have any direct questions about your specific situation, all my contact information is right in the video description below. And I'd love to hear from you and give you a little advice about your situation specifically. Now, if we want to look at the market overall, the first thing we want to look at is the median sale price. The median sale price tells us what the midpoint of all homes selling. And it's important to track this to give us a pulse of the real estate market. And in November, the median sale price came in at $625,000. Now, that's up 4.2% from last month. It's also up 7.8% from last year. Now, you might not remember, I do because I make a lot of these videos, but last November, we actually had a huge decrease in the median sale price. The market was, kind of ticking along all year pretty good. But actually, at the end of the year, we saw a lot of homes being sold at discounts and a lot of sellers who were kind of desperate to get a deal done at the end of that rough year, letting their homes go maybe for a little less than it was worth. We don't see that same behavior happening right now. Prices have been holding on pretty steady all year. In fact, when we look at the chart here, we can see that pretty much at the right side of this chart, what you see is the prices have been pretty consistent all year, hovering right around that $600,000 level, bouncing up and down depending, on a little bit of statistical anomaly each month. Now, what do we want to expect next? Well, I think it's a pretty sure sign that we can expect prices to start to climb back up in 2025. I'll get into some of those reasons a little bit later. But let's take a look first at the breakdown. Where are the homes selling by price point? And what you can see here is the most significant bar on this chart is the 600 to $700,000 price point. That's where the most number of homes were sold last month. And that can be surprising to some people who would think of Brantford as being, a more affordable community. But you see that most homes are selling still 600 to 700,000 requires quite a bit of capital and, income to qualify for that type of mortgage today. But people are figuring out how to do it. You can see that range of homes, really from about 400,000 to $800,000, is the center of Brantford real estate where you can expect to find most of the properties. And as we move up above the $800,000 price point, the number of sales happening starts to drop off really quickly. And actually, if you look at the high end of this chart, only one sale north of 1.4 million. I'll actually take credit for that one. That was me selling a property at 2.2 million. But really, basically, be over 1.1 million. We only had two sales all last month, right? And so the center of the market is very hot and active, while the higher end price points still are struggling to find buyers. Now, the reason we expect prices to move up in the new year is because interest rates have been coming down all year. And in fact, yesterday there was just another announcement that the variable rate is coming down by half a point. That brings it down to 3.25%. That's down 1.75% from its peak of 5% that was really slowing the market down. Now, it takes time for these interest rate changes to roll out through the market, but immediately anyone holding a variable rate mortgage is going to feel some relief, right? You're going to feel either your payment go down or more of your payment going towards your principal. And also, if you're holding on to any other debts that are on a variable loan, that's going to be instant relief. And we expect that to continue. Fixed rates haven't moved as much in recent months, but they are still just on the edge of being very competitive. When we start to see fixed rates with a three in the front of them, that gets buyers a little more excited. And right now it's hovering just a little bit above the three, a little bit below, at 3.9 or 4.1, depending on what you qualify for. And we're going to have to see how that plays out in the new year. But the lending conditions in 2025 are going to be way different than they were at the beginning of 2024. Quite a significant change in your ability to qualify and overall mental, consumer confidence in the market. So stay tuned. I think we're going to have an early spring, and I think that's going to result in increased demand right out of the gate, which is going to push prices up in the early part of the year. Now, if you're curious of how this might affect your own housing situation, I have a couple services that might be useful to you. Number one, I can provide you a free evaluation on your property digitally, right? If you send me your address, I can send you back all the recent sales in your neighborhood and give you a pretty good estimate based on your home, the last sale point, the data we can see online, exactly what range it would be worth right now, and whether it's in a aggressive, fast moving market, or it might be in one of those tougher to sell segments. So all you got to do is click the link below in the video description and request that information, and I can send it over to you later today. The next thing that people are concerned about in the housing market is usually how fast it's moving. And the way we measure that is we look at the median time to sell. Now, I use a statistic called continuous days on market. This might be a little inside baseball for those of you that aren't, real estate stats geeks like me, but you might notice people take their home down, put it back up, take their home down, put it back up. It's called a cancel and a relist. And on the public MLS system, this will actually reset your time on market to 0 days. It might trick a buyer to thinking it's a new listing. But in the background in our system, the days just keep counting up. So I'm always measuring the total amount of time on market for homes, even if the agents are canceling and relisting them and trying to, kind of game the system. I go back to the real data. And what we saw that last month, the median time to sell a home was only 22 days. And this might be surprising to you if you're looking out on your street and you're seeing, hey, maybe that for sale sign's been there a long time. Well, what we're seeing is that actually a majority of the market is the fast moving part of the market. And so the homes that are priced properly, listed and marketed properly, they're getting offers fairly quickly. And then you've got a separate segment of the market that's just kind of hanging out and it's not selling at all. And those ones, obviously, if they don't sell, they're not going to show up in the statistics. But if we check out the long term trend here, you can see that over the last two seasons, we've had quite the fluctuation from home selling in as quick as like 6 days on market up to as high as like 25, 26 days on market being the median. And it looks like on the far right side of this chart that we've kind of hit our peak and that median time on market is actually coming down for this year. So this will be an interesting one to watch. Over the winter market, it tends to fluctuate a little bit because you've got two groups of homes being sold. You've got the fresh new listings that are moving quickly, and then you've got other listings that could have been on, all year, maybe since spring, and they're finally getting realistic with their price and they want to get a deal done before heading into January, February. So some sellers are reducing their prices, buyers are negotiating deals, and properties are moving. So you're going to see both of these things have an effect. And that actually shows pretty clearly in this next chart when I break down the quantity of homes selling at different times on market. So you can see at the top of this chart, that's the shortest time on market. So we have 1 week, 7 to 14 days is 2 weeks. And so you see that first chunk of like the first 21 days on market, those are the biggest bars for sure. And then obviously less and less homes are selling the longer they're on the market. The very last bar at the bottom represents all weeks over 12, basically, right? So 85 days plus on market, that represents 22 sales. So that's what I'm talking about, where there's a big group of buyers that, they've already been 3+ months on market. They've finally come to their senses, put the right number on their house and received an offer. Another way to look at this, one that I find, visually very interesting, is to plot them on a chart where we have the time on market up the side and the price along the bottom, and you can start to see some trends. That first chunk I had there, you can see 43%, almost half of the market is moving in under 30 days, right? That's a fast paced market. People are putting their homes up, pricing them properly, getting offers, and getting the job done. The next chunk of 37%, ranging from 30 to 90 days on market, same thing, right? Those homes were probably properly priced out of the gate, or they made a price correction early on in their listing and they got that offer taken care of. And what you see is that only 20% of the homes sold in over 90 days on market. And the further up you look on this chart, the less red dots you see, right? So buyers are really still after the hot, fresh new listings. The listings that have been on the market forever, they're really going to need a correction either to their price or their marketing strategy, or perhaps they want to come off for this season and try again next year. But buyers really aren't interested in these super stale old listings. It's usually that the seller has the home on the market at an unreasonable price and no real buyers are looking for it. Now, the big thing that I watch is the level of demand, because that really drives the market, right? How many people actually want to transact, actually want to write offers on properties? That is the fundamental statistic that controls how busy the real estate market is. And there's been some really interesting stuff happening that you have to look below the surface to see. So in November, there were 107 sales. And that number might seem big or might seem small. On its own, it doesn't really mean much. But what I have here is the statistics that show how much busier it was in November compared to last year and the year before. And this is the hidden thing that's happening in our market, which you might not sense unless you're out there participating in it or working in it like I am. And what we can see is that the amount of demand in November is much, much higher than a typical November. And that's going to be important in just a second. So let me get through a couple more charts here. This chart shows you the monthly demand, and the little trend I want you to see on the right side of this chart is how the demand is flattened out. It isn't sliding off a cliff like it normally does heading into the winter. We actually see on the right side of this chart that little spring spike, and then things have been pretty consistent, here month after month. And that was predicted by me earlier in the year because we had such a high interest rate environment and a high inventory earlier in the year. People weren't feeling a lot of urgency. A lot of buyers were still sitting on the sidelines. But as those lending conditions have improved and people's financial positions at home have improved, their confidence in the market has improved, you actually have more buyers coming back to the market in the late fall winter, which is very abnormal. Usually these are our absolute low point in demand. And so I wanted to carry that through even further to look right now, real time in December, right? So I looked at the first 10 days of December, and we've already seen 36 sales just already in 10 days. And so that if that pace continues, it could translate to that number being over 100 again in December. But right now, as we sit, that's 33% more sales in the first 10 days of December than last year. So that stays consistent with it wasn't just a 1 month blip in November, but what we're seeing is a trend of more buyers coming out of the woodwork, basically, what we'll say, right? Getting off the sidelines. But generally, what it is they've decided to stop waiting, right? If I look back one slide from here, you can see that this chart shows the total demand for homes year over year. And this year, 2024, is on the far right. It is the lowest total demand year in the last 10 years. And I bet it would be the lowest in a lot more than 10 years, but my data that I can pull easily only goes back 10 years on the system. So what does this tell us? Well, Brantford isn't smaller than it was in the last 10 years. It's actually bigger population wise. So why are there fewer transactions happening? Well, people are cautious. People are nervous, right? So a lot more people are staying put in their current housing situation when interest rates are high and the economy is uncertain. And as people get more and more confidence in their ability to borrow and their ability to actually pay those mortgage payments once they've secured that home, i.e., their job is secure and their income is secure, what you're going to see is this pent up demand that you can see clearly on this chart. The last 3 years have been so depressed in the total number of transactions that those buyers are starting to wake back up and move back out into the marketplace. So the real thing that's going to happen is the buyers returning to the market before the sellers do. Because a lot of sellers, they're going to be on the sidelines waiting for spring, right? Which we think as like April, May. But if the buyers are sensing this renewed energy and they're starting to shop in November, continuing to shop in December, they'll be out there in January. What's going to happen is they're going to buy up all the quality, well priced homes, and the buyers are going to start to feel like there's really not that much for sale. And that's what starts to spur that kind of like excited real estate market where people are outbidding each other and feeling like I better buy a house or I can't get one. Now, believe me, we're not going back to 2021 conditions, but I like to describe things like the real estate market like a pendulum where, in 2021, things swung way too far out of control. And then in 2022, 2023, they swang far back in the other direction where people were nervous, scared. Some people were losing money in the real estate market. What I think we're experiencing now is that pendulum swinging back, where it's like people are feeling confident again. People are ready to move on with their plans. People are out there getting their pre-approvals done. And that's a much more powerful force than what the news might tell you of, increasing insolvencies, increasing bankruptcies. Yes, they are, but they're such a small, small percentage of the market. Do not expect a huge flood of like bank sale properties or on the market. It's just not what we're seeing in real time. Let's fast forward to the one statistic that we can track that really tells us what's going on in the market without having to really understand or analyze too much else. And that statistic is the month's supply of homes. And mathematically, what this means, it's the relationship between the number of homes for sale and the number of homes selling. So inventory versus demand. And when we divide those two numbers out, we get a number that tells us how many more times bigger is the inventory than the demand. And this is the indicator we use to tell you, is it a buyer's market? Is it a seller's market? What should it feel like out there? So right now, the month supply is 3.4, and that's dropped almost 10% from last month, but it is up from last year. And that's a trend we've been seeing year over year. When you look at my chart that tracks this year over year, you can see in the crazy hot market of 2021, we're sitting around a 1 month supply at peak, right? It actually was below one all year. And then it kind of pushed up to two in 2022 as demand slowed down and inventory started to build. Then it peaked at three in 2023 as that trend continued. More inventory came on the market and buyers still were waiting on the sidelines. And that kept going in 2024. And we peaked out just above four this year, which is a real estate market we really haven't seen in like half a decade, right? Four is the area where we feel balance. It feels kind of calm and manageable out there. You have time to go look at houses. We can put a home up and market it and talk to buyers. In contrast, when the month supply is down at like one, that's when you were seeing those lineups in the bidding wars and the crazy news headlines, and you couldn't believe it, right? Houses were getting 15, 20 offers, selling for $100,000, $150,000 over asking. Well, that's what happens when there really isn't any supply of homes and everyone's really excited about buying them. And what we're seeing right now is that the month supply is decreasing and we expect it to continue to decrease. It should go below three by the end of the winter because inventory is dropping as we see it and demand is staying high. So I think we've hit the peak buyer's market for this kind of season or this cycle. And actually, the market will be shifting back more in favor of the sellers in 2025. So I think you'll start to see that this peak for next year comes in below. We probably spend the year around three or maybe even below 3 months supply. And it's all going to depend how the spring market plays out. One thing I like to do is to break down the month's supply by price range because these are very different markets in Brantford. And an interesting thing I can see on this chart here is if you follow the pink and blue lines, those are the more affordable price points. We're talking about under 600,000 or 600 to 800,000. And they're tracking along pretty steady at a good, balanced, favoring the seller's market. It's not crazy like 2021, but it is still very fast paced. Most homes that are priced properly under $700,000 are getting lots of attention right out of the gate. You can see the gray line, 800 to a million, and the white line, a million plus. They took off like a rocket earlier this year and they were very, very slow. So the higher the number, the slower the market. Slow meaning it's favoring the buyers. It's easier to buy. You have lots of choice. You have lots of negotiating power. But as you see on the right-hand side of this chart, both of those numbers, the white bar, the million plus, and the gray bar, the 800 to a million, had taken a sharp decline. And two factors are happening. Number one, homes are starting to move. Buyers are starting to make offers in those price points, and sellers are giving up. Other sellers are just letting their homes come off the market. They may have been trying all year, they haven't gotten offers, so they decided to take a break for Christmas. And so when you have homes actually selling and other sellers taking their homes off the market, you're working that mathematical equation from both directions. So we have the inventory going down while the demand is going up, and that's seeing that rapid change, that quick, sharp decrease in both of those numbers. And we expect that trend to continue. Now, of course, the higher price points are going to take a little more time for their energy to come back. Most of these higher price points are driven by people moving in from out of town. They sold their more expensive home that was closer to the GTA and they're able to come and spend that money in Brantford. Or perhaps you've sat in your home for a while here in Brantford, you gained some equity and you're ready to move up. But these really aren't the segments for the first time home buyer based on today's qualification rules and everything. Now, that being said, there are some new mortgage rules coming into play in the middle of the month, just a few days from me recording this video, that are going to make it easier for people to buy homes over $1 million with low down payments and CMHC backed financing. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I think that, those new rules are going to affect the GTA market where prices are typically north of a million much more often. But that energy does work its way westward as people are able to get a better price for their home in the GTA. They're able to bring that money and spend more money and buy a bigger home here in Brantford. And that's a big trend we see waking back up in 2025. Now, I would really now, if you are shopping for a home in Brantford, I have a cool service for you. It's called a custom free list of homes. And I know you can go on all kinds of different websites, House Sigma, realtor.ca, and look up properties. And what I can do for you is if you tell me just a little bit about what you're looking for, I'll actually send you back a really easy to use list of all the available homes today. But on top of that, I'm going to hand pick out of the list what I think are the best opportunities right now. So all that service is right in the listing video below. You just have to click a link and then you tell me a little bit about what you're shopping for. And I'll write you back the same day with, hey, here's everything for sale right now, but here's what I think the best deals on the market if you were looking to get out and shop right now. Free service. If you're interested, click the link below. Okay, one last stat to wrap us up today and a few more predictions about the new year. So, the list to sale price ratio, this is how strong the offers are compared to the asking price. That came in at 98.5%, down a little bit from last month, up a little bit from last year, but overall hasn't changed too much. What we see is that the average offer is slightly below asking price. And I think it's more important to break this down in a few different ways to understand what's going on. So if we look at this historically, if you remember the real estate market of 2021, early 2022, this spiked to levels we had never seen before. To have the average home selling for almost 130% of the asking price was just absolute madness. And that was the effect of having that crazy low inventory environment. Since then, we've kind of been floating around again, just like the average price point, been hovering around this just under full price. This is definitely, if you've been hearing news stories, oh, people are just losing their shirt on their houses, they're letting their homes go. These are very one-off, far from each other situations. The market is still moving pretty strong, and people aren't just selling their homes at deep discounts. Most sellers are holding pretty firm to their asking price. And I can show you that in another chart. So this dot chart shows us the price ranges across the base and also the percentage of asking price on the vertical axis. And what I've highlighted here is that the 100% line and 5% below actually represents 64% of all the sales. Almost two-thirds of the sales are happening within 5% of the asking price. On the flip side, 31% of the properties are still selling over the asking price. And this might not make sense when you look at the news headlines that tell you the market's not doing really well. But what we see here is that people that are properly pricing their homes, doing a good job of preparing for them for the market, and then marketing them really strong, they are receiving multiple offers. In fact, I was just trying to book some showings today for a client, and two of the six houses we wanted to go see tomorrow are actually already in multiple offer situation today, right? And this is the type of stuff you might not realize if you're just reading the big news headlines. That leaves us on this chart with only 9% of homes selling below 5% of their asking price, right? And two big things I take away from this. Number one, if you're a buyer, if you're out there thinking you're going to negotiate some crazy deal, right? We're going to get 10%, 20% off the asking price. I'm going to lowball this guy by $100,000. That's a pretty rare thing in our market right now, right? Mostly what's happening is sellers are eventually correcting their price and then selling it. They're not having their price way up here and willing to negotiate way out here. There's not that many super desperate sellers in the market. On the flip side, if I'm a seller, I'm looking at this data and I'm thinking, wow, pricing is really important. If I don't have my price perfect, either strategically underpriced or within 5% of the true market value, I might not get an offer at all. I'm down to being one of this 9% of people that might get a low ball and finally negotiate it. But most of the energy in the market is happening on homes that are priced properly and negotiated well. So what am I predicting for next year? Well, the first thing I'm predicting is we are going to have an early start to the spring. Now, spring in real estate is a very variable term. Spring on the calendar, we know what that means, but spring in real estate means when the buyers start to come back to the market and wake up. And in some years, spring is traditionally March, April, right? We start to see the price we start to see the demand for homes start to rise. When the inventory is low through the winter, what can happen is we start to see demand rising earlier in the year. And that's what happened in 2021 and 2022. There was so few homes for sale over the winter that people went crazy right out of the gate. Spring started literally on January 2nd in the real estate market. Now, this year, I don't think it's going to be as aggressive as those 2 years, but I think the combination of lowering of the interest rates and many buyers coming off the sidelines, well, the inventory, right? The sellers are really waiting for that calendar spring instead of real estate spring. What you're going to see is an early surge of buyers to the market when there isn't that many homes for sale. And that's going to cause this excitement. Now, how do the sellers react to that afterwards? Do we expect a huge rush of listings on the market? I'm not sure, to be honest. My gut tells me that it's not going to be a huge inventory year, that a lot of the people that needed to sell their homes, they've been trying to do it this year and last year. And if you've made it through now and interest rates are going down now and you're starting to feel better now, you're not going to have this huge rush of excess inventory. Instead, we're going to actually have the buyer demand increase while inventory is coming down. So we expect 2025 overall to be a much hotter year. Now, if all of this is a little overwhelming, which I understand it can be, it's a complicated thing. The number one thing to realize is that the real estate market can't be all painted with one brush. It's very nuanced depending on what you're buying and what you're selling, right? The geography, the type of home, the price point, the exact supply and demand of that micro market. And this is where I can really help you. What we can do is have a free discovery call, no cost, no obligation, 15 minutes. We have a quick chat on the phone where you tell me about your situation and I tell you what's going on for you. This video is kind of the big, uh, you know, big swath of the Brantford market, but what does it actually mean to you? Well, we need to know about your situation. So if you're interested in that at all, it's a totally free service. I'm available all month. All you have to do is click the link in the video description below, and I can have that conversation with you and start your planning process for your next transaction. Appreciate you being here today. Let me know in the comments if you got any value from this video or if you have any specific questions about the real estate market, and I will be back early in January to get you started on your 2025 real estate goals. Thanks a lot. We'll see you in the next video.